Welcome to Body Kindness. I'm Rebecca Scritchfield, creator of the Body Kindness Philosophy book and audiobook. I'm here to help you create a better life by reinventing health from the body oppressive, shaming, and you'll never be enough type of mindset to positive and joyful ways that you can spiral up your energy, mood, and your well-being at any size, shape, or weight, and as you are right now. Get started for free at bodykindnessbook.com/start. That's the sound of me smashing a stack of scales in front of some friends. And I have to say that breaking up with the scale and all the other ways I was judging, monitoring, and measuring my worth was absolutely pivotal in my life. Creating the body kindness philosophy and letting myself be a human being again helped me become a better mom, a better clinician, and a happier and healthier person. I believe we all have a right to decide how we want to care for ourselves. And I think we all need support in figuring out what that looks like. You don't have to do this alone. There's a whole community of like-minded people who are fed up with diets, who are embracing intuitive eating, and who are completely redefining their lives from body shame to body kindness. You are not broken. Our culture is. Find your inner caregiver and create a better life with body kindness.
Research shows that there's nothing as effective as reaching out to people you know, right? Like text banking is great and you should do it. But the most effective thing that any of us can do is reach out to people we know who might be too overwhelmed, who might be having a really hard time. Maybe they lost somebody this year. A lot of us are struggling and reach out to people in our lives who maybe are going to need a little boost to make sure that they're registered, a little hand holding. And don't just say, are you registered? Will you register? But if you can, offer to help them figure it out, right? I want to help. I want to help.
That was Jacqueline Friedman, an educator, activist, and the force behind 4 hit books, Yes Means Yes, What You Really, Really Want, Unscrewed, and Believe Me, How Trusting Women Can Change the World. This is Jacqueline's 3rd appearance on the Body Kindness podcast. When you go to the link and show notes for today's episode, you are going to see links to her books and to our previous conversations. They are well worth checking out on their own. We are most enthusiastic about this conversation, Bodies on the Ballot. And we dive right in to where we're at in the United States right now with the election coming up. And we share a sense of hope and meaningful actions that you could take for yourself and then in helping others on getting registered, what to do about mail-in ballots, how to check in on your friends, and also this 3 simple steps that you could do. It kind of works in a cycle, how to look out for yourself and your own safety, connect to others, and find opportunities for fun. And we do mean that. This is not a frivolous conversation. This conversation will catch you no matter where you're at and your body kindness well-being journey. Jaclyn, welcome back to Body Kindness.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I'm so grateful to talk to you. This is your 3rd appearance.
I know. Do I get a frequent flyer card or something?
I was thinking Grand Slam. You do need a rewards card though. You need something from me. But just for listeners' benefit, if they haven't heard earlier shows, and I will send the links to the full shows in the show notes, but you came on first to talk about Unscrewed, which was a book you wrote several years ago, that is still very relevant today. So it's a great listen, a great book purchase, because it's really about how to stop the system from screwing us.
Yeah, I feel like it's more relevant than ever. I know I'm biased, but I'm I really wish more people would read it because it's about right now. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you kind of had some future predictions. So it's very fascinating. And then you came on again to talk about Believe Me, which was basically encapsulating Me Too stories about how the world could be better if we just listen to and believe women.
I know, that one simple trick, one weird trick to change the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
Kind of elevating from the pink pussy hat to, we talked about intersectionality and, intersectional feminism and how, the world was getting in its own way by not believing in the power of women's stories, women's leadership, and so many other factors. So we have those 2 full episodes to talk about. And that's exactly why when I watched the first debate the first presidential debate with my daughter, we were sitting by each other and we were on YouTube. And, look, she's not even 8 years old. And I said, hey, tell me what you notice about this room. And she was able to notice that they were all men, that they were all white people. And she was able to notice like the anger, like, why are they yelling? Why are they so upset? And so it was a beautiful conversation about having the right to our anger and the right to our rage, right? Soraya Chamali, right? And rage becomes her. But that what was happening was disrespect of the debate process and rules and structure. How can you be passionate and have your feelings and still kind of respect humanity and provide a debate so that it could be somewhat useful for those who are interested in watching? And when I saw that, I was not planning any body kindness episodes around the election. I don't know why. But I was like, bodies are on the ballot. That phrase came to me and I thought, I've got to see if Jaclyn will talk to me. And so that is why we're here. And I just cannot wait to give you the floor and have a conversation about why bodies are on the ballot and are always on the ballot, but especially so. And I was hoping we could start by talking about the word fauxpowerment, because it's a word I learned through you. And people don't know what
because
faux powerment
made
is
it up.
because you created it. You're so artistic. So could we start there and then just delve into all the things? Okay.
So faux powerment is my word for the dynamic where we focus on women's individual empowerment at the expense of our collective power. So the most relevant example for this conversation is Amy Coney Barrett, who has been nominated by Trump to serve on the Supreme Court to fill Ruth Bader Ginsburg's seat. And there's so much of faux powerment in that move to nominate her. The first is the idea that you can, like, one woman substitutes in for another woman. Like, they're all just black socks, and it
doesn't matter.
Yeah, I'm missing that black sock, so I'll just grab a different black sock. No one will know the difference, right? So that women are interchangeable, and that if what is good for one individual woman is good for all of us, and that's horseshit. It's absolute horseshit. And there were several takes written about how Amy Coney Barrett represents some new kind of feminism, and literally, I heard this tweet that went incredibly viral about it. So I know I'm not alone, because I was like, wow, I guess I hit a nerve. Which is, like, because feminism is a political movement, right? It's not a sorority where we are just supposed to be nice to our sisters.
Right.
And when our sisters, that's a contestable word in and of itself.
Not just CIS-ters.
Not just CIS, yes. When our sisters work against our liberation, they are not feminists, right? And we do not have to be nice to them. We can criticize them. It's not, people think or want to think, I actually think a lot of it's disingenuous, just as a way to silence women, right? Because we're not supposed to express anger. We're not supposed to be critical of each other, right? These are not womanly virtues. And so, I thought you were a feminist, but here you are critiquing this powerful woman, is literally just like a deeply bullshit, silencing, gaslighting argument, because women are wrong. And some women work against the power for all women. Amy Coney Barrett is against abortion rights. She wants to overturn Roe. She is against queer people's rights. She thinks Obergefell, which is the a decision that legalized gay marriage nationally, was wrongly decided. And by the way, so does the Republican Party. And just today, we were recording this on Monday the 5th. Is today the 5th?
I don't know. Let's hope.
And just today, Alito and Thomas, in making a decision about not taking a particular case that we don't have to get into the details of, on the record said they think Obergefell is wrongly decided and they can't wait to get a chance to overturn it, which means they're willing to blow up the entire history of the Supreme Court having a principle that it respects its own precedents, that once something's decided, it's a much higher bar to reverse it. It's a principle called stare decisis, but they're just like literally can't wait to overturn gay marriage. And Amy Coney Barrett is for that. Amy Coney Barrett is part of a very specific religious sect in which women are expected to submit their opinions to their husbands and their religious leaders for correction. And she has said out loud on the record that she thinks that judges should let their religious faith influence their rulings. So that's not me picking on her religion. That's me talking about how she's going to rule on the court, right? She's going to submit her opinion to her husband and her religious leaders. And she thinks all women should do that. So this is not a woman who is for women's liberation, right? It's not a woman who is for freedom from sex and gender discrimination. This is a woman who's for us being disempowered. And so whether or not she becomes more powerful is not a feminist accomplishment. And people get real confused about that. And sometimes I think they're legitimately confused. And sometimes I think they're pretend confused in a way that's meant to shame us and silence it. But I'm not having any of it.
Nor should you. Nor should any of us.
And by the way, she also wants to overturn the ACA, which would remove coverage from lots of women, especially poor Black and brown women who are at the front lines of the COVID crisis and for whom COVID is a pre-existing condition. And she wants to take their health care away. Like I could go on and on and on. Like she wants women to be less safe and less powerful. So her having power just because she's a lady is the opposite of a feminist accomplishment.
Right. And so in terms of fauxpowerment, that is...
Right. So fauxpowerment would be like, you go, girl. Isn't it great that this woman is being nominated to the Supreme Court? It's amazing. She's a working mom and like, look at all she's accomplished. That's what the fauxpowerment narrative is. So I always say like the narratives, if you're hearing something that's about one individual woman's quote unquote empowerment, you have to look deeper and ask yourself, is this bringing power to women, all of us, not just this one woman, trans women, Black and brown women, immigrant women, all women, all of us or none of us.
And so what about the listener who hears this and understands it and whether they were like, oh, yeah, I was thinking, well, at least it was a woman or something. And now I could see this differently and I feel scared and threatened. But what if the next thought is like, well, there's nothing I can do about it. This is done. This is set in stone. I mean, is that true?
It's not set in stone
Okay.
Because 2 Republican senators on the Judiciary Committee, where they have a 2-person lead in the majority, have COVID, and another one another Republican senator who's not on the judiciary also has COVID, and God knows there may be others that we don't know about who are just not telling us. So it is entirely possible, much more possible this week than last week. And I'm not cheering for people getting a horrible disease, but these are the facts on the ground. It is much more possible that we're going to be able to delay considering her nomination till after the election. If we do that, there are 2 immediate wins. One is that Trump, who, may I remind you, if we're talking about bodies on the ballot, is a serial rapist, among many other things that are bad for our bodies, let alone the stress that he's put us all through. Trump wants Amy Coney Barrett on before the election because he wants her to be a swing vote if there are cases about the election that reach the Supreme Court. He wants her there to literally help him steal the presidency. And so if we delay it till after the election, that's a huge win because he doesn't get that. And he also, the ACA case, the case that a number of states are bringing to try and overturn Obamacare, that the federal government is backing that effort. Without proposing, he keeps saying, "Oh, I'll have healthcare, an even better healthcare proposition." The GOP have been promising that for 7 or 8 years, however long we've had Obamacare, and they've been trying to repeal it. They still have not proposed it. So his plan is to replace it with nothing. Just to be clear, that case is going to be heard. It's slated to be heard by the Supreme Court right after the election. So it's also possible, if we can hold off her nomination, that we might be able to protect Obamacare. That's a huge, huge win for women and for everybody. Whether or not the Senate will try to pass her nomination in the lame duck and whether we can stop it then is a larger question. But every day that we keep her off the Supreme Court is a day that we can figure out other ways to keeping her off the Supreme Court. So the best thing you can do right now, wherever you are, if you're in the U.S., is call your senator and tell them that something that is true, right? This is not political shenanigans. It's not safe for the Senate to meet, right? It's not safe. It's endangering the Senate. And that you want them to wait until it's safe. If you have a Democratic senator, I also encourage you to urge them to deny unanimous consent to the Senate until they agree to put off the nomination. Unanimous consent is a rule by which most of the Senate operates, and without unanimous consent, nothing can happen. It's basically will slow everything in the Senate to a halt. And it only takes a few senators to agree. There just basically needs to be one senator on the floor at all times 24/7 to say, no, I don't consent to whatever it is that we're trying to do, even if it's just calling a meeting to order. So, maybe it would take 5 or 10 senators rotating in and out to block unanimous consent. So if you have a Dem senator, call them and tell them you want them to pull out all the stops. They could slow the Senate down. Look, the Senate's not doing anything productive anyway. Mitch McConnell's not going to pass COVID relief, which is what we really need from him. So let's shut it down until they agree that whoever is elected next gets to decide who fills RBG's seat. We really have the power to do that. And if you live in a state with a Democratic senator, you have the power to influence them.
So that was awesome. And I'm thinking that we could put these as little scripts in the show notes and then a link to the phone numbers or something like that. Just so
fantastic. Yeah, the switchboard for the Senate offices. Yeah.
Okay.
I called Ed Markey and Elizabeth Warren, my senators, last week and left a message. It's very easy to do, and they'll know what you're talking about. So you'll either have voicemail or you'll get a staffer, and you'll just tell them respectfully that you're a constituent of your senator, and this is where you are, what you want, what you're calling on them to do. And they'll take that down, and they basically keep tallies.
Yeah. So this is, it's interesting how we started about the idea of individualism versus the collective, right? Because as soon as you said that, I was like, okay, yeah, so fauxpowerment is rooted in white supremacy, like everything else. But that what I think is
right, as long as I got mine,
yes,
who cares about you, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And listen, it's when I was creating body kindness as a philosophy, I will be completely honest. I wasn't like, I'm going to create the next anti-diet and anti-racist program. It's so much of my question, at least since George Floyd, has been this reflection of what took me so long. And honestly, not in like a judgment, but just an honest question, like, where were the missed opportunities? I have a college education, right? I grew up in Northeast Ohio, Youngstown, right? Like there's a geographic and an economic situation where I could see certain things. And I'm learning more and more about, what took me so long is that my ancestors failed me. People made sure that I didn't learn what I needed to learn to think differently. And, yet or whatnot, when I look at the body kindness philosophy, love, connect, care, connection and caring, even in the book, are very literally about connecting to your body and like how are you feeling? And that could be, how did you feel when Ruth Bader Ginsburg died? Like, that's a body connection, right?
Right. And also defund the police is body kindness, right?
Yes.
Because the police are harming people's bodies, right? Not just through literal murder and violence, but between also the stress of living under a police state.
Absolutely. And that's the chronic stress. I mean, it's measured. It's allostatic load. And it's the stress that shows up when people have to chronically fight off threats. And yes, allostatic load could happen in anybody, but we know that it shows up in higher weight bodies. And we know it shows up in the Black body of all sizes, Black and brown bodies, anyone who's marginalized. There's a risk for higher allostatic load. That creates this risk for, poorer health and chronic diseases. Like, sorry, fellow dietitians, it's not just get your kale in. You had one less green smoothie and that's why you have heart disease. We know it's not that simple. And so it's like, when I think of that in your body, and I think of all of Resmé Medicum's work around somatic therapy and police bodies and white body supremacy and Black body, and literally letting your trauma move through your body. That came out after Body Kindness. And I see all these valuable connections about that's totally in line with the philosophy and connection, but it's also about connecting to other people, recognizing our common humanity, and then being fully committed to care for yourself. I do not mean, and it's me, like me first, and only my needs matter, but like that you care for yourself and your family and the people who matter closest to you, because you can't simply do all the labor in meaningful action to care for everybody. But care is also a collective, and it's a collective well-being. And that's what I think brings us back to, you might be showing up, listening for, hey, what's Rebecca going to say today? What guest is going to help me with like my body liberation, right? And I want to hold that space. But this is the call. This is the focus to push people, right? Think about the collective. Think about people who aren't like you and what they need. What we're saying is that's feminism. That's health.
Well, and bodies on the ballot, literally up and down the ballot, right? So think about that. We have to take the Senate in order to turn the courts around. We have to take the Senate. But there's bodies on the ballot in Colorado. I think it's a 20-week ban. There's an abortion ban as a ballot initiative in Colorado that's not getting enough coverage, that if passed, the right is ready to roll out in like a bunch of other states. And it's really on the bubble. It could go either way. Climate change is on the ballot, right? Like the difference in what this country is going to do in terms of regulating industry, in terms of public policy, in terms of global action on climate change, whether or not we have a Biden administration or a Trump administration, could not be more stark. And that literally affects all of our health, right? That's the health, that's our personal health, and the health of our children is on the line through climate change. All of these issues wind up coming back to the body. And so I really, absolutely, we need to talk about repro justice. Repro justice is on the ballot, but we need to see beyond repro justice and literally healthcare, which are obviously body issues, because so many of these issues, economic justice, right? Like whether or not we're making enough money to feed our families adequately and house ourselves and reduce that allostatic load and right access good food choices. The minimum wage, like literally like across the board, our bodies are on the ballot, and the choices could have never been more stark, right? So health outcomes under authoritarianism, not super great. They're just not. And this is the moment. So I don't know what to say to somebody who's listening and is a Trump supporter at this point. I'm not your person for that. But if you're deciding whether you think it's worth it to vote or not, right? If you're like, I haven't figured out how to register and I feel nervous about COVID and all of that stuff, I really, really want to encourage you, get yourself registered, request a mail-in ballot. You don't have to put it back through the mail once you receive it. Every district is going to have a place where you can drop off a ballot. so you don't have to worry about putting it back in the mail, and get that vote in. Get your vote in. Make sure your vote counts. And if you're already planning on voting, check on your friends. Are they registered? Do they have a voting plan? Check on your family, because turnout is going to matter so much, because they're trying to steal this election.
Mm-hmm.
They really are going to try everything they can to steal this election. And we need to win by enough that it's not possible, right? So the closer these elections are, and, these are a whole bunch of state and local elections that are going to be stitched together, right? That's how our system works.
Mm-hmm.
The closer these battles are, the more we're going to see things that might go up to the Supreme Court with a chance for the courts to hand the presidency back to Trump. So we have to turn out in literally unprecedented numbers. So whatever your listeners can do, everything matters. Every little action matters. It all adds up to the collective, to community care. Think about it as an act of care and connection, right? Think about it as looking after your neighbors. In my relationship with my partner, we have 3 rules for our relationship, but I think they're really great for all of us thinking about community care and action at this moment. And you do them in this order, right? Look after yourself. Right? Because you have to put your own oxygen mask on first. We all know this, right? So we need to make sure your own basic needs are met. You're safe, all that basic stuff. We have to look after ourselves, and we're not trying to negate any of that in this conversation. Once you're okay, right? Look out for each other, right? And then once you're looking out for each other and you're both okay, look for opportunities to have fun. And that's because we have to know what we're fighting for and not just against, right? We have to know what we want and not just what we don't want. And so I really want to encourage folks to figure out what they can do, if possible, with joy, right? Can you hold a bake sale? Can you, get really creative. What are the things that you can do to turn this election around with joy? With connection, that builds community, that builds movement power, with music, right?
Yeah.
With art, with, I don't know. I'm sure you listeners have a million ideas that I would never think of. So, which is exactly the part of it.
Well, it's really interesting. I've seen several Facebook friends show pictures of postcards they filled out and letters they wrote, and they're really sharing spiral ups, right? Because they're sharing like, hey, I did this. It was fun. It was interesting. It was meaningful. And I feel so proud that I'm getting these out in the mail. And so absolutely, that is definitely an act of body kindness, individual and collective.
I wrote postcards. My partner and I have decided we're trying to take one action every day that we think will influence the outcome of the election. And I definitely have written some postcards, and literally when we do one thing, and sometimes it's a small thing, right? Like it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be a hero. It doesn't have to feel gigantic. But I feel better when I do stuff, right? I feel like I'm connecting. I feel like I'm investing in community. And like, I like to think about the people who are going to receive those postcards and know that somebody far away cared about them. Right. But I also feel like calmer, like it manages my stress better. So I also can enjoy the rest of my, part of the reason we decided this is so we know when we've done enough, because it can feel so hard right now to feel like everything is so big. Like, how could I ever do enough? And therefore I'm going to do no things, right? It can be very paralyzing. So if we live up to that commitment we've made, then then I can like turn on the fucking TV and do my crocheting and like call a friend, like whatever I feel like doing, pay my toenails and, and that feels really good too, right? Like it helps me find that balance, when I've done the thing, whatever it is that day, then I'm like, all right, I did that thing for today.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Well, what you're saying is very cyclical too, because when you look for those opportunities for fun and meaning, this moment is meaningful, you are growing in your resilience. And you're also, shoring up your safety, right? You're back to number one, like look after yourself, make sure you're safe. That fun helps to reassure your safety. So I want to go back because it's worth revisiting. So the first step is you're focused on yourself first and make sure you yourself are registered. When that clears, share on social, have a conversation, however you're going to get the word out. You want to make sure people you know or who are connected with you, that they check that they're registered too. Like that's a small act. That's part of it.
Yeah. And research shows that there's nothing as effective as reaching out to people you know, right? Like text banking is great and you should do it. But the most effective thing that any of us can do is reach out to people we know who might be too overwhelmed, who might be having a really hard time. Maybe they lost somebody this year. You know, a lot of us are struggling and reach out to people in our lives who maybe are going to need a little boost to make sure that they're registered, a little hand holding. And don't just say, are you registered? Will you register? But like, if you can, offer to help them figure it out, right? You know, like, I want to help. I want to help. There's nothing as effective as contact from somebody you know.
And so then the next thing you said was the mail-in ballot. So I live in DC. My husband and I, we have our mail-in ballots. And I asked him, I said, oh, hey, I wonder if we should do this just because we have it. Like we have it, it's here. It would, you know, then it crosses off. Yeah, get it done. Like check it off, you know. So that is our plan. And I would say that COVID has influenced it in some way, like caring for kids who are in distance learning. It's kind of like, if it's easier to get it done this way, why not? Less of I don't want to show up to the polls because I'm afraid, because, you know, I'm doing all the safety things otherwise. But what your point is,
I mean, the really convenient thing about mail-in ballots and drop-off boxes at town hall is you can do it whenever, right? Like you're not dependent on when the polls are open. You don't have to wait in a line. You send off for your ballot. The ballot arrives. Some states you don't even have to send off for a ballot, which is great. But most states you're going to have to send in a form and say, I want my ballot mailed to me. And then if you have time at 11:30 at night and want to go and drop it off in that box, you can do it then. You know, you can drop it off in that Dropbox collections box. You'll be able to find on, you know, your Secretary of State will have information on where the closest drop-off box is to you. Some states are better than others. You know, some of them are going to be further away than others. But if it is convenient enough to you and you have transportation, I think it's a very convenient way to vote.
And if you choose to put it back in the mail, it'll tell you the postmark or anything else you need for that vote to count, or
it should,
like
and
that.
every state is going to have different rules. A number of states are counting based on the postmark and not on the receive by date. But some states, it has to be literally received by election day. So you're going to want to look into that. And again, this is why you might want to help a friend look at this. Collectively, you're going to put, there's a bunch of stuff to figure out this year. So why not do it together and help each other out?
Right. And for whatever reason, you are registered and you didn't fiddle with the mail-in ballot, polling stations will be open like we're used to, right?
Of course, yeah. I mean, look, again, it varies by state. Some states have early voting. Some states don't. Some states, the early voting has been cut back this year. Some states, they haven't. Some states.
So vote early if you can, though, right?
But if you can, vote early, both to make those lines shorter for other people on election day. And also, I think it's going to be lower risk for you in terms of COVID, right? Because it'll be less crowded. So if you can vote early, absolutely vote early in any form, or, you know, vote as soon as you can for sure. So check out when your polling places. Again, there's been a lot of fuckery. So there have been polling places that have been closed, but some people are opening new polling places. So you're going to want to look into it. You're going to want to let your friends help your friends look into it. The point is, do the research, help your friends do the research. Or if this is you, reach out for help. My DMs are open. I am at Jaclyn F on Twitter. And if you need help figuring out how to register to vote or how to vote, I will drop everything to help you do it. That is a very sincere offer. If you want personal help figuring out how to register and or how to vote, literally message me and I will help you figure it out.
That's a generous offer.
I would be honored to do it. So that's why you hear a lot of people say, make a plan, right? Because you're asking a bunch of questions, right? And I can't give one answer because state to state varies a lot and everybody's circumstance varies a lot. We've all got to make that plan right now and not leave it till election day.
Yeah. Yeah, 1,000%. It's and planning. I mean, look, planning helps everything go better. We could think of the littlest thing in life that if we plan, it goes smoother and we get more of, we do our job and we get the
Yeah.
outcome that we want, I mean, anything from, I remembered the dish soap on the grocery list. I can have clean dishes, right? It's, when you have that list, that plan, that intention, your brain learns, you feel better, you take action.
It's a way of, taking care of yourself and each other. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't wait. I've sent off for my mail-in ballot. I cannot wait for it to arrive. When it arrives, I'm going to fill it out and take it down to town hall. And I'm going to be so happy to vote. Like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
really excited to get to have a say in what happens next.
Mm-hmm.
In my state, in Massachusetts, we have ranked choice voting on a ballot question, which is very exciting to me. Ranked choice voting is a method that helps people vote for the candidates that they really care most about, even if they don't think they have the strongest chance of winning, because then you can also say, if my candidate doesn't win, here's my second choice, right? So it gives third parties and outsider candidates a much stronger chance. Because people don't have to use that strategy like, oh, am I throwing a vote away if I'm voting for the person I truly want? And it really is a much more democratic process.
That's a real important point when you talk about we're not just voting for president. When we say down the ballot, we mean who is running for what and what can I get in my state. And right.
And there are some incredible progressive candidates running this year. Down ballot, for prosecutor and state Supreme Courts and your town city hall, right? Whoever runs your city government and state representative and state senate, all up and down the ballot. I work for an organization called Way to Win. I've been doing some consulting with them. And they have a PAC called the Way to Lead PAC, which I'm sure you can link to in the show notes.
Definitely.
And they have a whole bunch of down ballot candidates that they've endorsed that are real, true community-based progressives. So if the top of the ticket's not energizing to you, I get it. I really want you to vote for them anyway. But if you need something else to get excited, it matters. Because voting also is harm reduction, right?
Yeah.
Voting is not about a dream. Voting is these are the choices we have. And when you don't make a choice, you leave the choices up to the people who are voting, right? You're literally giving up your own power by not voting. So find something else on that ballot to get excited about and let that motivate you to cast all your votes.
This is awesome. I love your opinion. So as I mentioned earlier, as a mom, I sat down with my older daughter and watched some of the debate. I was the one who had to X out of YouTube because I was feeling very
Oh my God, we turned
threatened.
it off half an hour in. It was too much.
It was a lot. And then I'd get a pause and I'd say, this is what they're talking about. I would help her make sense of it. And we are all in to watch the vice presidential debate. By the time this is up, that would have happened.
I'm so excited to watch Kamala in that debate. I am very excited about Kamala. Let me say, I don't want people to think I'm not enthusiastic. I'm very excited about Kamala Harris.
Yeah. That's great. And so I know that will happen. But any other just workable ideas? I'm definitely going to talk to people I know, like you mentioned, and in ways that matter. I'm going to use my daughters, right, as a chance of educating them. And I guess sort of, hey, let's FaceTime grandma and, say this message. And they're both working on writing skills. So there's got to be a way where I can find, again, people we know or just other people, just even if it's small bites.
Your daughters sending messages to people in their lives being like, please vote. That sounds very effective, actually.
Right? Well, listen, last time we were in this place, the last presidential election, kind of like in the aftermath, it was completely unexpected. I mean, I already told my girls we're going to have the first female president. And so I had to backtrack all kinds, I know. But they talked in my daughter's pre-K, right? What should a good president be? And I saved my older daughters. It's going to get framed and go in the memory box. And it says a good president should be kind.
Yes, a good president should be kind, and we can have that. Like, we
Yeah.
have a real choice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we have a real choice.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, and as things get closer to election day, think about there was a study done at Oberlin that showed, I think this was, I don't remember if it was a city election or like a literally university, like student body president election, but
Mhm.
there were people standing out far enough away from the polling places. And when people came out of the polling places, that person said to them, will you text 3 friends and ask them to also come vote? And it increased voter participation by like 12%.
Whoa.
Right? So there are things, literally, that doesn't take any special training. You can, all of us could do that on election day. Hang out outside your polling place, find out what the rules are about how close you can stand, but you're not even advocating for any particular candidate necessarily. Don't harass people on their way in. They never want to talk on their way in. You want to get the job done. When they're leaving, you can say, can you text 3 people and ask them also to come vote? So there's a million ideas out like that. There are a number of organizations that are doing text banking and phone banking, and some in-person get out the vote stuff in some places. You'll have to make your own decisions about your comfortability with in-person stuff. There are a lot of great places to give your money to. There's going to be a huge march on October 17th that's being run by the Women's March about RBG's Supreme Court seat. So you can get in the streets, literally whatever way. I always say in terms of organizing and activism, like figure out what is the thing that you want to give. Right. And so again, like I said, have a bake sale, right? I've been thinking I love to bake, and I especially make gluten-free treats because I can't have gluten. But people, there's a demand for that. And I've been thinking like, maybe I'm going to do a thing where if you give X amount of money to one of these 5 causes, tell me what you want to bake and I'll bake it and send it to you. Or I've started crocheting, and I can also be like, do you want me to crochet you something? It's going to cost a donation to one of these places. So all of us have things that we can offer to incentivize people, or like incentivize people to like, show me that you registered to vote and I'll blank, like make it fun, make it joyful, make it feel, it's harder than ever this year to make it feel like a party because we can't be together physically, but we're infinitely creative, right? So let's find ways to make it feel like a joyful revolution.
Ooh, yes. Yes. A joyful, fierce revolution, right? It could be all of that.
All of it.
I love the idea of you baking, as it reminds me of when you were making ice creams and giving them really like political names. So make sure you give your snacks. Oh, you did?
Because I have to watch my blood sugar now, so I don't make ice cream quite as much as I used to. But I also wanted to diversify. Like I made so much ice cream that I was like, sometimes I want a brownie.
Yes.
But I love to make desserts in general. And I don't do it as much as I used to because I have to keep an eye on my blood sugar. But now this seems like a great excuse for me to bake a bunch of stuff and give it to other people,
sell to
which
other
is
people.
like
right.
win-win. I get to have a little nibble and then I send it away.
Right. Any idea? I mean, I'm sure there's lots of causes, but just because if someone's like, I'm not sure where to ask people to donate. You had mentioned that Way to Win has a PAC called Way to Lead. So
yeah, Way to Lead PAC is a great place to donate if you want to support a whole bunch of amazing progressive down ballot candidates, and you don't want to have to sit down and think about which ones. They're hugely data driven, very movement oriented, working on a base expansion strategy. They're amazing, and they'll make sure your money goes to the place where it's going to make the most difference. And another organization like that that is going to take your money and invest it in movement work. The reason we want to invest in movements and not just in candidates is so that when the candidates get elected, then the movement has the power to hold them accountable, right?
Absolutely.
And so the Movement Voter Project is investing in movements that are doing election turnout work, but that are also at the same time simultaneously building movement capacity so that when we do succeed in electing these amazing candidates, we also have a stronger movement.
Right.
So that's a great place to donate.
That reminds me of like the marathon, right? Getting the candidates in is like the 5K, the sprint, but the Movement Voter Project is like the marathon.
The Movement for Black Lives is pairing up with a number of other organizations, and you'll have to forgive me, my brain is fog, creating this multi-racial coalition to do election protection and defense work. Because, we may have a lot of work to do after Election Day, depending on how this goes, because they're going to try to steal it. And it's called the Frontline. It's either Frontline or Frontlines. And that's an amazing place. I mean, they're basically working to take all of the power they've built in the movement for Black Lives and electoralize it, right? Like turn it out to the polls and also turn it out to defend our democracy. That's an amazing place to invest. Those are just some places off the top of my head. Yeah.
That's great. One more question to end on, and I'm just imagining, so we've carried this listener this far, and there's that sort of, we haven't sold him yet. There's that, but some, who just does feel like down or hopeless or like inspired by the action, but hasn't yet taken it. Like, how do you give hope when it feels like the most scarce thing around, but there's a risk of what it's going to turn into is, well, I know I'm going to go blue, so I'm not going to do something, or and not out of being lazy, but just like exhaustion, pain, suffering, all of it. What can we say for that most, suffering voice that just doesn't really feel that their effort is going to lead to anything meaningful?
I mean, I'll say two different things. One is, if we don't win right now and win big, it's only going to be harder to win in the future, right? This is our best shot. Every authoritarian regime falls eventually, but what it's going to cost all of us to take him out of power and to take them out of power, because this is not just about one man. If we don't get them out of power right now, it's going to cost us a lot more. So let's do what we can now, because this is the cheapest option, right? Is taking action now. It's going to cost us more in the future to fight this. And know that every authoritarian regime eventually fails. They do. Just look at history. And then the flip side of that is that we have to stop thinking about hope as a feeling. So I'm going to go on a slight tangent, and then I'm going to come back around to that idea. I have an MFA in creative writing, specifically in poetry. And before I entered grad school to get that MFA, I mostly wrote poetry when the mood took me, right? When the muse arrived, right? Like when I felt it. And I had a really hard time when I first started grad school. You had to turn in a poem every 2 weeks to be critiqued, like whether you felt the muse or not, right? Like that was your assignment. And I heard
there once was a man from Nantucket.
Yeah. That's a very good way to fail out of grad school. But yes, it got a little like that for a minute. And one of the best things that I learned was that it's great when the muse arrives, but I can write beautiful, powerful poems with whatever emotion I have, right? So if you're acting out of despair, as long as you're taking action, great, right? Like you don't have to feel hopeful. The great writer and thinker, philosopher, Rebecca Solnit, who is just one of my North Stars through this time, wrote a book in the run-up to the Iraq War, which was re-released after the 2016 election, called Hope in the Dark. It's very short. I recommend people who are looking for a new relationship with hope, who feel hopeless and wish they had some hope. I couldn't recommend it anymore. And the basic idea, and I'm sure I'm doing this wrong because she's so brilliant, but the thing I took from Hope in the Dark is this: it doesn't matter whether or not we feel hope. It matters whether or not we produce hope, right? So if we act as though there is no hope, we are making it more likely that there is no hope by our lack of action.
Right.
Whatever our emotions, right? If we act as though things could change, we are making it more likely for things to change. So I feel you. I am ground down to a paste and exhausted. I'm sure you can hear it in my voice, right? Like I'm wrung out. I do not feel excited and hopeful every day, but I every day act as though there is hope.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need to separate those two things, whether we feel hope and whether we're going to behave hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm calling on folks to do is the latter, right? Recognize that you feel hopeless, but still act as though there might be hope, because you can produce hope that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that so much. And it feeds into when I talk about all emotions are good for you, even negative emotions and even bad emotions. So when you talked about taking action out of your despair, like that's the beneficial purpose part of the despair, saying, hey, something that matters to me is at stake here.
Yeah.
And this emotion can drive me.
Exactly. If you feel despair, it's because you care so deeply about something that's going wrong, right? And so find that place, right? You care. If you didn't care, you wouldn't be feeling despair.
I love that. And I love, because when you were talking about the first one about take action now, it solidified the idea of how I'm going to involve my girls, and they're going to show up like, full of energy and action around this idea now. But when you mentioned about this is our shot, they are deeply into Hamilton. Like everything. Watching my 6-year-old break out into how does a bastard orphan son of a whore line, and, not flinch, watching my grandma like, whoa, what's this? Anyway, we have got these Hamilton stickers. The idea of I'm not throwing away my shot. I could see them writing this, don't throw away your shot, over and again. So we'll pull some great Hamilton lyrics, put some stickers, and get some things in the mail. And
when I'm really, really down, I think about all the people historically who faced greater odds than this, right? And who've eventually prevailed, right? Like African people were stolen from their homes, carted across the ocean, and kidnapped and enslaved, right? And they eventually won their freedom, right?
Bodies on the ballot.
Bodies on the ballot. So what the situation we're in is bad, but is not that. So change is always possible. And reading history is a great way to remember that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it, that ends us on a message of hope too, that, it has been a lot worse, and things we care about are at stake. Our individual bodies, our collective bodies, and we are connected, and we're born to connect, and that's not going to go away anytime soon. And we just need to figure out our values and our beliefs and tie that into meaningful action and create some serious change, Okay, so I've got lots of links to look up, and I greatly appreciate your time today. Where can folks find and follow you? I know they can go in your DMs and Twitter at Jaclyn F.
I'm so serious about that. Yeah. If I can help you register to vote or make a plan to vote or do anything that helps you or your loved ones vote, hit me up.
Yeah.
And you can also DM me on Instagram. Same deal. I'm at Jaclyn Effable, JACLYNFABLE. So find me there. You can find me on my website, jaclynfriedman.com. I do have a podcast called Unscrewed. It is on hiatus right now because I'm doing so much election work and I just can't right now.
Right.
But you can subscribe to that feed so that when I come back, you will be subscribed. And those are the best places to follow me.
Yes. And we'll have the links to our interviews, which also include your amazing books, which I will put in the show notes too. So thank you so much for coming on Body Kindness.
Oh, it's an honor. Thanks for having me.
And that's our show. The podcast is made possible with support from listeners. Please donate to help offset production costs at gofundme.com/bodykindness. And please rate and review the show when you have a moment. It really matters. Let's keep the conversations going on Facebook. Search Body Kindness and request to join the group for Body Kindness readers and listeners. Have a question for us to answer on a future episode? Visit bodykindnessbook.com/question. Body Kindness books and audiobooks are available wherever books are sold. To request a signed print copy, visit bodykindnessbook.com/order. For other questions about this podcast, please email info@bodykindnessbook.com.